Come on, Mom. You don't know anything about finance. If you start talking about money, people will think they're watching a fairy tale. The room burst into laughter, but only one person didn't laugh. Mary Thompson, 68 years old, widowed with hands roughened by decades of labor, stood frozen, clutching a small handmade gift wrapped in newspaper. She had only wanted to say one simple thing, "Honey, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." But her words were swallowed, buried under the sound of her daughter's amusement. The birthday candles glowed softly. The living room shimmered with music. Crystal glasses, polished shoes, and conversations about promotions and investments. In that sea of sophistication, Mary looked like an old photograph faded out of place, holding a gift stitched with love that suddenly felt foolish. Samantha, or Sam as everyone called her, turned 35 that night. An office professional, well-dressed, surrounded by intellectual friends, and a charming husband named Ryan. To her, kindness was outdated in hard work. Without a title meant failure. Mary smiled faintly, her lips trembling, as if they were trying to hold a secret the world didn't care to hear. Sam continued her tone, light, but sharp enough to cut. "You don't have to worry about me, Mom. These days, love doesn't pay the rent." Laughter, again polite, comfortable, cruel. And beneath it, the quiet sound of something breaking. Mary sat down still, holding her gift, a simple bracelet she had woven from leftover thread. To her, it meant love. To them, it meant nothing. What no one knew was that inside her worn-out purse sat a passbook, a record of 40 years of work sweeping floors, washing dishes, trimming gardens. $200,000, saved penny by penny, all for the daughter who now laughed at her. She had wanted to say, "I've been saving this for you, Sam, for your future, for your peace." But how do you talk about love to someone who only measures worth in money? So she stayed silent. Again. Around her, the candles flickered. The guests raised glasses, and the woman they called useless lowered her eyes, hiding a lifetime of sacrifice behind a trembling smile. No one noticed the tear that rolled quietly down her cheek or how she wiped it away before it could stain the gift she made with her own hands. That night, in a room filled with noise, Mary learned the cruelest truth of all. Sometimes the deepest humiliation doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the child you spent your life loving. And as laughter filled the air, she whispered in her heart, "One day you'll see. A useless woman can still love deeply enough to build a fortune and humble enough to give it away." Because sometimes, silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of love holding back tears. Mornings for Mary began before sunrise. When the world was still half asleep, she was already sweeping floors in an office that didn't know her name. She moved quietly, like the hum of a ceiling fan, like the ticking of a clock erasing yesterday's footprints, so someone else could walk into a clean tomorrow. By noon, she traded her broom for an apron. In the small diner near Maple Street, she carried trays, heavier than her frame, smiled at customers who never looked her in the eye, and counted tips like blessings. Every coin, every crumpled bill, folded carefully, tucked away, destined not for comfort, but for purpose. When the sun went down, she wasn't resting. She was tending a restaurant garden, trimming hedges, watering roses, chasing weeds that grew faster than her years. 3 jobs, 7 days a week, 40 years of work, not for luxury, not for pride, but for love. At the end of each month, Mary walked to the same small bank on the corner. She stood in line with her passbook, pressed close to her chest, depositing her savings in silence. No new dresses, no vacations, no dinners out, just numbers slowly climbing the quiet evidence of a woman's devotion. There was a time when Sam, her daughter, used to brag about her. Back in high school, when teachers asked about heroes, Sam wrote essays about my mom who never gives up. Mary still kept one of those papers folded in the pages of her Bible, yellowed but cherished. But something changed. The day Sam received her college diploma, she began to see the world differently. She made new friends, people who spoke in terms of degrees, stocks, and careers. And somewhere between those conversations, love turned into embarrassment. Sam stopped inviting her mother to gatherings. She started saying things like, "Mom, maybe don't wear that sweater," or "Let me handle this. It's not your kind of place." Mary would nod, pretending not to notice the distance growing between them, pretending that silence didn't hurt more than words ever could. Sometimes, when sweeping alone, Mary would pause by a window and watch the reflection of her own tired hands. Hands that had packed lunches, paid tuition, patched clothes, and wiped away tears that no one saw. Hands that gave everything, even when they trembled. In the stillness of those early hours, she would whisper to herself, "You're doing fine, Mary. Just keep going." Because to her, work wasn't punishment. It was a promise, a way of saying, "I may not be smart like them, but I'll never stop trying." Every scar on her palms was a story. Every ache in her back, a memory of love lived honestly. Yet the cruel irony of time is that it turned sweat into shame, not for the one who labored, but for the one who forgot. Sam saw rough hands and thought poverty. Mary saw them and thought perseverance. And though the world may never celebrate women like her, Mary knew one truth. Greatness doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears an apron. That night, after another long shift, she counted her earnings under a flickering kitchen light. The notebook lay open, the balance growing. $200,000, not from luck, not from inheritance, but from faith in small, steady steps. She closed the book, whispered a prayer, and glanced at a photo of Sam smiling in her graduation gown. "You made it, sweetheart." And that's all that ever mattered. But deep down, she wondered if love built everything. Why did it feel like it was no longer enough? The afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen window, warm and golden, the kind of light that usually made everything look gentler. But that day, even sunlight couldn't soften what was about to happen. Sam had invited her colleagues over for dinner. Polished, confident people who spoke about markets, mortgages, and management. Mary, as always, offered to help. She moved carefully around the kitchen, wanting everything to be perfect for her daughter. She arranged the plates, set the silverware, and poured the wine, her hands steady from years of service, though her heart still fluttered every time she tried to belong in her daughter's world. And then it happened. A single slip. A glass of red wine, tipping, falling, splashing across the white tablecloth like spilled shame. The room froze. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wine dripping from the edge of the table. Sam's face hardened, her voice sharp as glass. "Oh my God, Mom, you've worked with your hands your whole life. How are you still this clumsy?" Laughter flickered awkwardly among the guests. Not cruel, but heavy, the kind that tried to hide discomfort behind polite smiles. Sam forced a laugh, brushing it off. "That's just my mom. Always busy working, never learning anything useful." The words landed like stones. Mary's hands trembled as she reached for a napkin, trying to blot the stain, but the real stain had already sunk deeper into her chest. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I just wanted to say, I've been saving some money." But before she could finish, Sam interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "Money. Oh, Mom, please don't tell me you've been talking to those scam artists again. You can't invest in anything. People take advantage of seniors all the time." Silence, the kind that hums louder than any noise. Mary froze napkins still in hand, her reflection trembling in the red spill. She wanted to say, "No, sweetheart. It's real. It's for you. I've worked my whole life for this for you." But the words never came. Her throat tightened. Her eyes stung. She could feel the weight of every year she'd spent, working every scar on her palms. Every prayer, whispered over tired bones, suddenly made small, foolish, and unseen. The guests shifted uncomfortably. One of them murmured, "It's okay. Accidents happen, but the damage was done." Sam had already turned back to her friends, laughing softly, pretending nothing happened. Pretending her mother's silence wasn't the sound of something breaking. Mary stood there, the napkin now soaked in wine, her heart heavy with all the things she could never say. This was the second time she tried to speak. The second time, love was silenced. She lowered her eyes, swallowed her pride, and cleaned the table quietly. In that room filled with polished laughter and half-empty glasses, she realized the hardest stains to remove are not the ones you can see. That night, as she walked home under the fading sky, her mind replayed every word, every chuckle, every sigh. Her chest ached not from anger, but from the sorrow of being misunderstood. She thought of her savings, the $200,000 hidden away, a treasure built from exhaustion and hope. She had dreamed of sharing it, of seeing her daughter's eyes light up with surprise, gratitude, love. But gratitude can't grow where pride takes root. So Mary whispered to herself, voice trembling in the night air, maybe it's not time yet. Maybe one day she'll listen. And with each step, she carried her silence like a secret. A fragile thing, waiting for the day love would finally be heard. The house creaked with the kind of silence that only comes from years of being alone. It was small, a weathered wooden cottage on the edge of town, where the wind slipped through the cracks like old memories. Mary hung her coat on the same hook she had used for decades, then turned on the small lamp by the window. The light fell softly across the living room, onto faded curtains, a teapot waiting on the stove, and the photographs that lined the wall. In the center hung Sam's picture, a little girl in pigtails, missing a front tooth, holding a crayon drawing of the two of them. Beneath the glass, the colors had begun to fade, but the love in that child's eyes still glowed like a promise Mary could never forget. She sat down at her old wooden desk, the one her husband built before he passed, and opened a worn leather notebook. Inside, her handwriting filled the pages, dates, amounts, tiny notes beside each deposit. Her savings, every dollar earned from hands that never rested. And at the top of the last page, written in careful, trembling letters, "For my daughter when she needs it, not when she wants it." Mary traced the words with her finger, her touch lingering, as if love could be rewritten, as if pain could be erased. The clock ticked softly. Outside, the night stretched wide and quiet. Inside, a woman sat alone, surrounded not by emptiness, but by memories that spoke louder than company ever could. She reached for a photograph of her husband, whispered, "I tried, you know. I tried to raise her right, to teach her kindness, to give her everything." Her voice broke. But somewhere along the way, she learned to measure worth in things I don't understand. Tears welled up hot and uninvited. Mary pressed a hand against her chest, where pride and heartbreak tangled together like vines. She wanted so badly to tell Sam the truth. To say, "You think I know nothing about money, but I know sacrifice. I know saving. I know what it means to give up every comfort for the sake of love." But every time she imagined speaking, she heard the echo of her daughter's voice. "Mom, you don't understand anything." And that voice, it wasn't just sound. It was a blade, a small, sharp knife carving its way through years of devotion, through a heart that had only ever meant well. Mary closed the notebook, wiped her tears, and stared at the moonlight filtering through the lace curtain. She whispered, "How can love be so heavy and still invisible?" Her room smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. On the table beside the notebook sat a single cup of tea, gone cold, untouched, forgotten like her words. She leaned back in her chair, exhaustion sinking deep into her bones. For a moment, she imagined another world, one where Sam looked at her and saw not calloused hands, but hands that built a life. Not ignorance, but wisdom written in labor. Not weakness, but quiet strength. But the dream faded as quickly as it came. The house groaned, the wind sighed, and the only thing left was the ticking of the clock and the soft rhythm of her own breathing. Mary reached for her pen one last time that night and added a single line beneath her note. "If love must be silent, let it still be kind." Then she closed the notebook, folded her hands, and whispered a prayer, not for wealth, not for recognition, but for a day when her daughter would finally see her, truly see her. And in that fragile hope, Mary drifted into sleep, her tears drying before they ever reached the page. Morning sunlight spilled across the fence, catching the dust on the old wooden posts that separated Mary's small yard from the one next door. She was bent over gathering fallen leaves into a pile, her back curved like a question the world had never answered. From across the fence, a voice called out warm and familiar, "Need a hand with that, Miss Mary?" It was Ben, 40 years old, broad-shouldered, his hands stained with grease in years of honest work. He owned the small repair shop at the corner of Willow Street, The kind of place that smelled of oil and trust. He hopped over the fence with a quiet grin, scooped up a handful of leaves, and began helping without being asked. With Ben, silence never felt heavy. Mary smiled, the corners of her lips softening. "You're always helping me, Ben. Don't you ever get tired of fixing things?" He shrugged, brushing dirt from his palms. "Not really. Some things are worth fixing, especially if they've been carrying too much weight for too long." They worked side by side for a while, the rustle of leaves filling the spaces words didn't need to occupy. Later, as they sat on the porch sipping tea, Mary glanced at the photo of her daughter she kept in her wallet. Her voice softened. "My girl's smart, you know. Works hard. She's busy. That's all." Ben looked at her eyes, kind but honest. "Being busy's fine, Miss Mary. But being too busy to love, that's not the kind of success anyone should want." She lowered her gaze, folding her hands together. "She'll come around. She just needs time." Ben nodded slowly. He knew better than to argue. He'd lost his own mother when he was 16, a woman with hands that smelled of soap and garden soil. He still remembered the way she used to hum while cooking, how she never left a room without touching his shoulder. A small reminder that love doesn't always need words. Sometimes, when he looked at Mary, he saw pieces of that memory, the same gentleness, the same unspoken strength, and it broke something inside him to see her carry love that had nowhere to go. He took a sip of tea, then asked quietly, "What's the point of money if it doesn't bring warmth?" Mary smiled a sad, knowing smile and turned toward the horizon. "Maybe. It's meant to teach us how cold people can be." The words hung between them, light as air, heavy as truth. Ben set down his cup. "You've done enough, Miss Mary. You don't owe the world any more proof that you're good." She chuckled softly. "Goodness isn't something I do for the world, Ben. It's just how I keep from becoming bitter." For a moment, they sat in silence, two souls from different generations, bound by understanding. A gentle breeze swept through, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the neighbor's garden. Mary watched a bird land on the fence post and whispered, almost to herself, "I just wish she'd see me, not as someone to outgrow, but someone who helped her bloom." Ben looked at her, then really looked at the wrinkles carved by laughter and sacrifice, at the eyes still full of tenderness despite the hurt. He wanted to say, "You deserve more," but he knew she wouldn't accept it. So instead he said, "If she ever forgets what love looks like, send her my way. I'll remind her." Mary laughed, wiping the corner of her eye. "You're too kind, Ben. Too kind for this world." "Kindness is the only thing I've got that doesn't break," he replied. The sun began to set, painting their small street in gold. Mary stood brushing the dust off her apron. "Thank you for helping Ben. Anytime, Miss Mary. Some neighbors you help because you should. Others, because it feels like home." As he walked back toward his yard, Mary lingered on the porch watching him go. For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel so lonely. She turned to her notebook, waiting inside the one filled with years of careful numbers, and whispered, "Maybe kindness is still the richest thing I have." And somewhere in the fading light, a woman who had given everything felt for just a moment that she hadn't lost everything after all. Voice direction, female narrator, gentle, warm, slightly wistful. Add pauses after reflective lines. "Ban yu tung kung la ban ma." Being too busy to love, that's not the kind of success anyone should want. Let the ending fade with softness, a quiet sense of gratitude amidst solitude. Would you like a short version? 250 words with the hook? What's the point of money if it can't bring warmth? It started with a phone call. Mary was wiping down her kitchen counter when her daughter's name flashed on the screen, Samantha. Her heart lifted. Sam rarely called during the day. "Mom, could you come by my office this afternoon?" Her voice was brisk, professional. "We're setting up for an internal exhibition. I could use an extra pair of hands." Mary smiled instantly. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll be there." She arrived right on time, wearing her best cardigan, the one with the little pearl buttons she saved for special days. The building towered above her, glass and steel, everything shiny and new. Inside, people moved with purpose, their heels clicking like metronomes of ambition. Sam met her in the lobby, clipboard in hand, her smile quick and polite, the kind you give to strangers. "Mom, over here! Can you help me unpack those boxes?" Mary nodded grateful, just to be near her daughter's world. She rolled up her sleeves and began working, arranging brochures, wiping down tables, polishing glass displays. Her movements were careful, precise, the way they always were. A few co-workers gathered nearby, chatting, sipping coffee, laughing. Sam gestured toward Mary, her tone light, but her words heavy as stones. "Everyone, this is my mom. She's the one who taught me how to work hard." She paused, a playful smirk curling her lips, especially at cleaning floors. Laughter rippled through the group, polite at first, then louder. Mary froze mid-motion, her cloth still pressed against the table. The sound of laughter wrapped around her like a cold wind. She turned slowly, her face warm, her chest tight. I brought you something, Sam. I wanted to give you—" But before she could finish, Sam cut in her tone, dripping with condescension. "Oh, Mom, let me guess, some canned goods on sale. You always find those bargains." More laughter. Someone snickered. "She's adorable." Mary forced a smile, small trembling, the kind that tries to hide pain and only makes it clearer. Her fingers curled around the little gift bag she'd brought, a small box, tied with a ribbon, handmade with love. She lowered it quietly onto a chair, as if setting down something fragile like hope. "I'll just leave it here," she whispered. Sam didn't hear her. Or maybe she did, but pretended not to. She was already back to work, giving orders, impressing her colleagues with her efficiency. The successful daughter, standing tall beside the mother she'd just made small. Mary kept moving, finishing her tasks in silence. Each laugh, each glance, each whispered comment felt like dust settling on her skin, impossible to brush away. When the setup was done, she gathered her things. Sam glanced up, briefly waved. "Thanks, Mom. You can go now." That was it. No hug, no warmth, no second glance. As Mary stepped out of the building, the sun caught on the glass doors, reflecting her image back at her small, bent tired. She hardly recognized the woman staring back. The third time she had tried to tell her daughter. The third time love had been silenced by shame. She walked slowly down the sidewalk, clutching the little gift bag in her hands. It wasn't canned food. Inside was a locket she'd bought months ago, engraved with Sam's initials, wrapped around a note that said, "For the day you're ready to listen." But that day never seemed to come. Mary sat on a bench outside the bus stop, eyes fixed on the traffic. Her throat ached, but no tears came, only a dull, quiet ache that pressed behind her ribs like a secret trying to escape. She whispered into the wind, "I just wanted to give you something real, my love. Something I worked my whole life for." But all she had given, it seemed, was invisible. All she had left unspoken. Around her, the city moved, unbusy, bright, indifferent. And Mary, the woman they called useless, sat beneath the wide sky, holding a gift that would never be opened. Somewhere deep inside, a thought stirred, a truth she had long tried to ignore. Love, no matter how patient, can't bloom where pride takes root. Still, she whispered softly, "Maybe one day you'll see me not for what I do, but for why I've done it." Then she stood, straightened her cardigan, and walked home, a woman small in the world's eyes, but still carrying a love too big to measure. The night it happened, the sky was heavy with rain. Dark clouds gathered above the little street where Mary lived, and the wind carried the scent of an oncoming storm. She had just finished her last shift of the day, 16 hours on her feet, the kind of labor that wears down more than just the body. Her steps were slow, her breath shallow, her hands still sore from the work that had long become her second heartbeat. By the time she reached her gate, the world was spinning. She clutched the fence, gasping, the keys slipping from her fingers. The garden lights blurred into halos, the earth tilted beneath her feet, and then everything went dark. When she woke, the sterile glow of hospital lights replaced the stars. The faint beeping of a monitor pulsed beside her, each sound a reminder that even strength has limits. Ben was there sitting by her bedside, worry etched across his face. When she stirred, he leaned forward. "You scared me, Miss Mary." Her voice was weak, soft as a sigh. Got a little tired. The doctor entered clipboard in hand, his tone firm but kind. A little tired. She's been working 16 hours a day. Her body's shutting down. She needs rest, not another shift. Mary looked away, shame flickering in her eyes, as if resting were a luxury she hadn't earned. Later, after she was discharged, Ben walked her home, insisting she stay seated while he tidied the house. He swept the floor, stacked dishes, folded laundry, small acts of care that spoke louder than pity ever could. When he opened the old wooden cabinet to store a blanket, his hand brushed against something tucked inside a small tin box, dented at the corners. It rattled faintly when he lifted it. Curious, he set it on the table and gently opened the lid. Inside lay a leather-bound notebook, neatly folded papers, and a sealed envelope with Sam's name written across it in careful handwriting. Ben hesitated, then unfolded the notebook. Rows of dates, deposits, handwritten notes. $200,000. Years of sacrifice hidden behind humility. He opened the letter next. The ink was faint, the words simple but full of heart. When you read this, my dear, I hope you still remember how to love. Ben's eyes softened. He looked over at Mary resting in the chair, her face pale, her breath shallow. So much love, so much silence. He closed the letter carefully, holding it as though it might crumble in his hands. You were going to give her this, he asked gently. Mary nodded weakly. One day, when she's ready to listen. And what if that day never comes? She didn't answer. Her eyes glistened, the reflection of a mother's hope, flickering like candlelight, fragile but alive. Ben leaned closer, voice steady, earnest. Miss Mary, you've spent your life saving this money. But it's not just money, it's love. It's every hour you worked, every night you stayed awake. If she doesn't know, it's not her fault. It's because you've kept your love locked away. Mary looked down at her trembling hands. I wanted to tell her, so many times, but every time I tried, she made me feel small, foolish, like love wasn't enough. Ben shook his head gently. Love is always enough, but only if it's shared. You have to tell her, Miss Mary. Otherwise he tapped the tin box softly. It's just numbers on paper. It's warmth no one ever feels. For a long moment, she said nothing. The rain outside began to fall steady and soft, tapping against the window like a heartbeat. Finally, Mary whispered, I'm scared. Of what? Of being laughed at again. Of seeing her eyes the way she looks at me when she thinks I don't understand. Ben reached across the table, his rough hands covering hers. Then let her see. Let her see everything. The hands that built her world, the love that raised her, the woman who never gave up. Don't hide what should be honored. Mary's lips quivered, and for the first time in a long while, she let herself cry, not quiet tears of shame, but the raw, cleansing kind that came from finally being seen. The storm outside deepened, wind rattling the windows, thunder echoing across the hills. But inside that small, humble home, something shifted. A truth long buried had been unearthed. A love long silenced had found its voice. Ben closed the tin box, setting it gently back on the table. You don't have to be strong all the time, Miss Mary. Sometimes strength means letting others know you've been hurting. She nodded, eyes still glistening. For the first time, she considered what it would mean not to give her daughter money, but to give her understanding. Outside, the rain slowed. A single ray of light broke through the clouds, catching the edge of the tin box, glinting softly like hope. It was a quiet Sunday evening when Mary accepted her daughter's invitation to dinner. After weeks of rest, her hands had stopped trembling, but her heart hadn't. She still carried the echo of Ben's words. You have to tell her. Love can't stay locked away forever. So she came not with grand speeches, just a hope that maybe tonight would be different. The dining room was warm, lit by the soft glow of candles. Sam sat at the head of the table, smiling, poised, the image of a woman who had everything under control. Her husband, Ryan, poured wine, setting plates in their places. Mary took her seat quietly, smoothing the wrinkles from her old dress, the same one she'd worn at Sam's graduation. At first, the conversation was pleasant work, travel plans, small talk. Mary listened, nodding, her eyes soft with pride. But soon, the tone shifted. Sam sighed, glancing at her mother's slow hands as she reached for her fork. Mom, you really should stop working. Honestly, people might think you're homeless or something. The words struck like cold water. Ryan looked up, startled, his fork pausing midair. Mary's hand froze, the fork slipping against her plate with a faint trembling sound. She forced a smile, the kind that cracked at the edges. Sweetheart, I keep working because I want to save something for you. Just a little so you... But before she could finish, Sam laughed loud, sharp, dismissive. Oh, Mom, stop. You've worked your whole life, and what do you have? $500 in this economy that barely fills a gas tank. The table erupted in laughter. Friends and colleagues joined in, light, casual, thoughtless. Only Ryan didn't laugh. His brow-furrowed eyes, flicking between his wife and her mother, seeing for the first time what others refused to see. Mary lowered her gaze, her shoulders trembling. She tried to blink back the tears, but they came anyway, slow, quiet, falling into her lap. No one noticed, no one except Ryan. He cleared his throat softly, his voice gentle. That's enough, Sam. But Sam waved him off, still smiling, unaware of the fracture she had carved into the room. Mary whispered almost to herself, I only ever wanted to make you proud. Her voice cracked on the word proud. Ryan reached across the table, covering her hand with his. You already have, Mary. The room fell silent. The laughter faded. Sam blinked, startled by the softness in her husband's tone. Mary wiped her eyes quickly, trying to steady her breath. She wanted to speak, to tell them everything. About the long nights, the aching hands, the hidden notebook, the love counted in deposits and prayers. But her throat closed, strangled by years of being dismissed. So she stayed silent again. She finished her meal in small, careful bites, while the others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Each second stretched like a lifetime. When dinner ended, Sam kissed her mother on the cheek, a gesture empty as air, and said, Next time, don't bring anything, okay, just yourself. Mary nodded faintly, clutching her purse. Inside was the same envelope, sealed, waiting, full of love and numbers her daughter would never believe. She stepped out into the cool night. The air bit at her cheeks, drying the tears before they could fall again. Behind her, the house glowed bright, loud, full of everything she'd ever hoped to give her daughter. But standing there alone on the sidewalk, Mary finally understood love doesn't always need witnesses, but cruelty. It always finds an audience. She whispered into the quiet, I worked all my life for her, and tonight, she gave me back nothing but laughter. Her heart ached, not for the insult, but for the distance between them, that love alone could no longer cross. In the window, she saw Ryan watching her go, his eyes soft, heavy with something like apology. And for the first time, Mary realized someone had finally seen her. The door closed behind him, and she turned toward home, a small figure in the dark, carrying everything she'd ever been told was worthless. But somewhere deep within a storm was brewing, not of anger, but of resolve. Because every heart, even the gentlest one, has a breaking point. That night, the house was still. Only the faint ticking of the clock and the whisper of wind against the windows kept her company. Mary sat at her small wooden desk, a single lamp casting a warm circle of light over the blank page before her. Her hands, rough from decades of labor, trembled as she lifted the pen. There were no rehearsed words this time, no cautious attempts at kindness, no hope of being heard, only truth. She took a deep breath and began to write. My dear Sam, tonight I tried again to bridge the distance between us with love. But love, it seems, can't cross where pride builds walls. Her eyes blurred with tears as memories surfaced. The sound of floors being scrubbed at dawn, the sting of winter water on bare hands, the quiet satisfaction of folded paychecks, each one a step closer to a dream she never claimed for herself. I used to think I was saving for your future. Every dollar was a promise that one day you would live easier, freer, kinder. The pen paused. A tear fell, darkening the corner of the page. But I see now, money can't buy what we've lost. You have everything, yet somewhere along the way, you forgot the value of a gentle word. She wiped her eyes, her breath trembling. I wanted to leave everything to you. But how can I give my life's work to someone who sees love as weakness? I cannot let you believe that cruelty is a right or that kindness belongs only to fools. Her hand tightened around the pen. The words came faster, fiercer, no longer from pain, but from a place of truth long denied. I will not punish you, my child, but I cannot reward what has broken me. She leaned back, the ink still wet on the page, her heart heavy, yet strangely calm. Outside the rain had stopped. The sky, once stormy, now shimmered with the first faint stars. Mary looked toward the window and whispered, I loved you enough to save. Now I must love you enough to let go. She folded the letter carefully, slid it into an envelope, and wrote her daughter's name across the front. Then she set it on the desk, untouched, unsent. For a long time, she stared at it, this fragile thing, full of words she could never say aloud. Then, with a quiet sigh, she reached for her notebook, the one Ben had found. She turned to the last page, where her careful handwriting charted 4 decades of work. Beneath the final total, $200,000, she wrote a single line, transferred to the Useless Women Fund. A small smile tugged at her lips, bittersweet, but real, because she knew what she was building now. A gift not born from shame or expectation, but from grace. This fund, her fund, would help women like her. Women who worked quietly, who were told they were less than who carried their worth in tired hands and steady hearts. It would teach them new skills, give them second chances, remind them they were never useless. Mary whispered the name aloud, almost laughing through her tears. The Useless Women Fund. It sounded almost poetic, a gentle defiance wrapped in humility. A reminder that those the world dismissed were often the ones holding it together. She closed the notebook, placed it beside the envelope, and sat still listening to the silence that now felt less lonely, more sacred. Her heart ached, yes, but beneath the ache was something stronger, peace. She rose, walked to the small cabinet where she kept her keepsakes, and placed the tin box on the top shelf. Inside it lay her letter, her notebook, and 4 decades of love, all finally where they belonged. Turning off the lamp, Mary stood by the window, watching the faint shimmer of dawn breaking along the horizon. A new day was coming, one not built on waiting for understanding, but on giving meaning to everything she had endured. She whispered softly, if love is my legacy, let it grow beyond me. And in that quiet, with tears dried and resolve firm, Mary Thompson, the woman they called useless, finally gave her life's work a purpose worthy of her heart. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Sam's office, spilling gold across her desk. She was flipping through emails when a voice called from across the room. Hey, Sam, isn't this your mom? The words were casual, almost playful, but they carried something that made her freeze. Sam looked up. Her coworker stood by the break room table, holding a folded newspaper. Across the front page, in bold black letters, was the headline, Local Woman Donates $200,000 to fund helping single mothers learn new trades. Below the headline was a photograph, an older woman standing beside a small banner that read, The Useless Women Fund. Her hair was silver, her smile shy, her hands clasped in humble pride. Sam's heart stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. It was her mother, Mary Thompson. The woman she had called useless. The room began to buzz, quiet gasps, murmurs of admiration. That's incredible. She must have worked her whole life for that. I didn't know your mom was like that, Sam. That's amazing. Their voices blended into a hum of awe, each word another stone of realization pressing against her chest. Sam reached for the paper, her fingers trembling as she read. At 68, Mary Thompson has spent decades working multiple jobs, cleaning offices, washing dishes, and tending gardens, all to save $200,000, which she has now donated to support single mothers in need of job training. Each sentence struck deeper, cutting through layers of pride she didn't know she still carried. When asked why she chose the name, The Useless Women Fund, Mary smiled and said, because the world often forgets the worth of those who work quietly. We may be called useless, but we build everything that lasts. Her eyes blurred. The paper shook in her hands. Around her, colleagues smiled. Sam, that's your mom. She's a hero. You must be so proud. But pride wasn't what she felt. Not now. Not anymore. It was shame raw and sudden curling through her chest like fire. Every memory rushed back. The birthday laughter, the spilled wine, the office joke, the dinner table, humiliation. All the time she had silenced her mother with mockery, blinded by her own arrogance. She saw with painful clarity the look in Mary's eyes, not weakness, but love restrained. Not ignorance, but understanding too deep to demand recognition. Her hands dropped to her lap, the paper folding closed like a confession. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ryan, who had been standing quietly behind her, stepped closer. He looked at the photo, then at his wife, his voice low, steady. "She's not useless, Sam." Sam blinked, tears brimming. "I know." But Ryan wasn't done. His gaze softened, but his words carried weight. "She was never useless. She was just treated that way." The room fell silent. The truth once hidden now echoed through the space, a simple sentence holding the weight of years. Sam pressed the newspaper to her chest, as if trying to hold on to the mother she'd only just begun to see. She thought of Mary sitting alone, working long nights, saving pennies. Of her hands calloused, trembling, and the way they had always reached out even when pushed away. Tears spilled over, silent and unashamed. For the first time, Sam didn't try to hide them. She stood, gathered her things, and whispered to Ryan, "I have to go." "Go," he said softly. As she stepped out of the office, the city outside looked different, sharper, brighter, almost too real. Each streetlight, each passing stranger, reminded her of what she'd missed, the quiet grace of those who give without asking for applause. Her mind replayed her mother's words, ones she had never heard, but now could almost feel. "When you read this, my dear, I hope you still remember how to love." And somewhere deep inside, Sam whispered back, "I do now, Mom, I do." She folded the paper carefully, holding it close, as if it were her mother's hand. For the first time in years, she felt small, but not from shame alone. From awe, from humility, from love rediscovered too late, yet still alive. And as she walked toward home, her tears glistened under the morning light, not just of regret, but of awakening. Because sometimes the loudest lessons are taught by those who never raise their voice. And sometimes the ones we overlook are the ones who teach us what it truly means to have value. The afternoon sun lay soft upon the garden, painting the leaves in gold. Mary stood among her roses, watering each stem with the same patience she'd given her whole life, slow, steady, faithful. The gentle rhythm of the water was her prayer, her peace. She didn't hear the footsteps at first. Only when a shadow fell across the garden path did she turn, and there at the gate stood Sam. Her daughter's face was pale, her eyes swollen from tears, her hands trembling as if holding something too fragile to name. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence carried all the words they'd failed to say for years. Then quietly, Sam stepped forward, and before Mary could move, her daughter dropped to her knees on the soft earth. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Mom, I was wrong. I've been wrong about everything." Mary's breath caught. She set the watering can aside, her heart aching at the sight, not out of triumph, but tenderness. She knelt slightly, her knees bending with age, but her voice steady, kind. "No, sweetheart, you weren't wrong. You just forgot where you came from." Sam's tears fell freely now, soaking into the ground, the same soil her mother had tended for decades. "I don't deserve anything from you. Not your money, not your forgiveness." Mary reached out, brushing a stray hair from her daughter's face, a gesture so familiar it pulled years of distance back into closeness. Her touch was soft, like sunlight through clouds. "Oh, my love," she whispered, "I didn't save for you to receive. I saved so you could learn to give." The words hung in the air, gentle but powerful, a truth both humbling and freeing. Sam bowed her head, her shoulders shaking. All the pride, the arrogance, the blindness, they crumbled in the warmth of her mother's grace. For the first time, she saw her not as a simple woman, not as someone to fix or outgrow, but as the quiet architect of everything she was. Mary helped her to her feet, her hands firm, yet trembling with age. They stood there together, mother and daughter, surrounded by the fragrance of roses in the hush of the evening breeze. Sam whispered. I read the article about the fund, the Useless Women Fund. Everyone at work was talking about how amazing you are. Mary smiled softly, her eyes full of calm. Amazing, no. Just tired of being invisible. Sam's lips quivered. You were never invisible, Mom. I was just too blind to see you. Mary shook her head gently, a tear tracing the lines time had carved into her face. No, my dear. I didn't need you to see me. I just needed you to see yourself in me. For a while, they said nothing. Only the sound of wind weaving through the leaves and two hearts mending in silence. Sam finally spoke again, her voice trembling, but clear. I can't undo what I said, what I did. Mary's eyes softened. You don't have to. Regret isn't meant to chain you, Sam. It's meant to guide you. The words fell like rain on parched earth, gentle cleansing alive. Sam stepped closer, resting her forehead against her mother's shoulder. Mary wrapped her arms around her daughter, the embrace firm yet forgiving. In that quiet garden beneath the fading light, they held each other not to erase the past, but to honor what survived it. Tears mingled sorrow and gratitude, pain and peace, until they were indistinguishable, flowing together like rivers, finally meeting the sea. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky to amber. A cool wind stirred, carrying with it the scent of lavender and the faint, sweet echo of forgiveness. Mary whispered one last truth, soft enough for only her daughter to hear. Love doesn't keep score, Sam. It just waits until we're ready to understand it. Sam closed her eyes, nodding against her mother's shoulder. For the first time, she felt small, not diminished, but grounded, rooted in something real. And as the day gave way to dusk, a mother's love, once silenced by laughter, finally spoke not in words, but in the quiet mercy of being held. 1 year later, the morning light poured softly through the tall windows of a small classroom. Rows of tables were neatly arranged, and in each seat sat a woman, some gray-haired, some weary, some shy, all carrying stories etched deep into their hands. At the front of the room stood Sam. Her hair was tied back. Her sleeves rolled up, a gentle confidence in her smile. In her hands, a stack of notes, lessons on typing spreadsheets, and the simple art of believing you're not too old to begin again. Let's start with what you already know, she said warmly. Because experience is just another kind of wisdom, one the world forgets to measure. The women nodded, a ripple of quiet hope passing through the room. Some had been factory workers. Others, caretakers, cleaners, cooks. Every one of them had been called useless once. Now they were students, dreamers, reclaiming their worth. On the wall behind Sam hung a framed photograph, Mary Thompson, founder of the Useless Women Fund. Her mother's gentle smile watched over them, still as if blessing each lesson, each small victory. After class, Sam stayed behind, erasing the board, tidying the desks. She paused by the photo, touching the frame lightly. I'm doing it, Mom, she whispered. I'm helping them find what you always had: purpose, even in silence. Outside, the world bustled. Buses hissed, doors opened. Life carried on. But in that little classroom, something sacred lingered. Not just education, but redemption. Not just charity, but legacy. Each woman who walked through those doors carried more than notebooks. They carried proof that love sown quietly can bloom loudly, even after the gardener is gone. Later that evening, as Sam closed the classroom door, she caught sight of her reflection in the glass. For a moment, she saw not herself, but the woman who came before her, the one who worked 16-hour days, who saved pennies, who forgave cruelty with grace. A tear slipped down her cheek, not of sorrow, but gratitude, because now she understood. I once thought my mother was useless, she said softly, almost as if confessing to the wind. But she was useful in ways the world could never measure. She stepped outside the last light of day, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. The breeze carried the scent of jasmine, her mother's favorite, wrapping her in memory, in warmth. Sam looked toward the horizon, her heart full, her voice quiet but firm. Old age is not useless. Labor is not failure. True uselessness is forgetting how to be grateful. She smiled, closing her eyes, as the evening wind brushed her face. Behind her, in the soft glow of twilight, the sign above the door gleamed, "The Useless Women Fund." Once those words had sounded like insult. Now they shone like truth, a tribute to every hand that built every heart, that endured every woman who gave without expecting to be seen. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, Sam whispered one last time, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." And in that quiet moment, it felt as if the air itself answered, not in words, but in the rustle of leaves, the hum of life, continuing the soft, invisible touch of love that never really leaves. The circle had closed, not with wealth or pride or applause, but with gratitude, humility, and a legacy that whispered through generations. To be useful is not to be praised. To love is enough.